The rain fell in sheets, thick and angry, drumming against the metal skin of Riker Voss's shuttle as it descended through the choking atmosphere of Keflar. He hadn't planned to land here, just to stop for emergency fuel, a break from the silence of deep space, but as he stepped onto the stone platform that served as a landing zone, the roar of a distant crowd pulled at something primal inside him. He followed the sound. It led him through a narrow alley, past shuttered market stalls and broken statues, toward a glowing arena carved into the planet's dark rock. The walls were ancient, breathing with the weight of history, and above them, lightning tore jagged cracks into the sky. The crowd roared again, voices layered with hunger, and BLOODLUST. Riker moved closer, his boots splashing through puddles as he entered the arena. His translator implant crackled, struggling to interpret the screams. Words came through. Finish her. Make it clean. In the center of the arena, two figures fought in the rain. One a massive warrior with 4 arms and ceremonial red armor raised, a gleaming sword. The crowd chanted his name, Dreer, Dreer. The other figure, smaller, bleeding, barely standing, was a woman. She held no weapon now. Her blade had snapped in half, and the rain washed long streaks of indigo blood down her cheek. Riker froze. There was something in her eyes. Not fear, not surrender. Defiance. The moment the warrior lifted his sword to strike, something in Riker snapped. He didn't know why. He didn't think. He moved. His feet splashed onto the stone. The crowd felt quiet. A few gasped. On the ground near the woman lay an old, rusted sword, half buried in mud and blood. It looked like a relic, forgotten by time. Riker reached down. His fingers brushed the hilt and the sky erupted. Light exploded around him. Lightning tore across the heavens and slammed into the arena floor. Stone cracked beneath his boots. The sword, once dead metal, shook violently. In his hand, glowing from within like molten fire, the air went still. Then a voice, ancient and trembling, rose from the stands. The prophecy. It has been fulfilled. The sword has chosen. Gasps turned to murmurs. Murmurs turned to kneeling. Riker stood in the center of the arena, the glowing sword humming in his grip, staring in disbelief at the silent crowd. Then he turned. The woman was still kneeling, one arm clutching her side. She looked up at him, her eyes hard as the storm above them. She spat blood onto the stone, wiped her mouth, and spoke. "You're my husband now." Riker blinked. "What? You took the sword." "The sacred blade of my clan. It recognizes only one master, and by our laws you are bound to me, to my name, to my fate." Her voice was hollow, not thankful. As she rose slowly to her feet, the rain softened, and every figure in the crowd dropped to their knees in silence. Riker stood, frozen, the sword glowing in his hand, the woman's words echoing in his head. He had no idea what he had just done. The sky above Keflar still boiled with storm clouds, but the rain had slowed to a cold mist as Riker Voss followed Lee through the narrow stone corridors behind the arena. The walls were slick with moss and old blood, and every footstep echoed like a drumbeat of fate. He had barely spoken since the sword chose him. What could he even say? That he hadn't meant to interfere? That he didn't know this single act would bind his life to hers? None of it mattered now. The sword had made its decision, and the people of this world had already dropped to their knees. Ly limped ahead, one arm wrapped tight around her ribs. Riker could see the pain etched in every motion, but she made no sound, not a grunt, not a breath too loud. She moved like a warrior trained to suffer in silence. He quickened his pace to catch up. "Lay," he said carefully. "What happens?" "Now?" She didn't turn. "You follow. And you don't speak unless you're ready to die for what you just did." They passed under an archway scrawled with symbols that glowed faintly as Riker moved beneath them. the sword still strapped. Across his back seemed to hum in recognition. It wasn't just a weapon. It was watching, listening, judging. After what felt like hours of twisting corridors and underground descent, they emerged into a vast, forgotten chamber, a shrine built of obsidian stone and old bones. Torches flared to life as they entered, revealing murals of ancient warriors wielding the same blade Riker now carried. In every depiction, the warrior stood beside a woman with eyes just like Lee's. Riker's stomach twisted. This wasn't just prophecy. This was a cycle. Liy collapsed against a stone pillar, finally letting the pain show. Riker rushed to her, but she held up a bloodied hand. "Don't touch me," she muttered. "Not yet. You're hurt. I've been hurt before." "This is nothing." She turned her eyes on him. "You should be worried about yourself." Before Riker could respond, a low voice filled the chamber. "So the sword awakens." After all this time, a figure emerged from the shadows, an old man with silver tattoos winding up his neck and eyes that burned with strange light. The same sage who had shouted in the arena. He studied Riker with unsettling calm. "You don't know what you are yet, do you?" Riker shook his head. "I didn't mean to." "Doesn't matter," the sage cut in. "You touched the blade. It chose you. And now you are not only her husband, you are the sword bearer." "Of the Broken clan?" "Broken?" Lee coughed, wiping blood from her mouth. "My clan was once the strongest on Keflar. Now we're scattered, hunted, and dying. Dreer sees us as a stain he hasn't yet wiped clean." "Then why does he fear—" "You?" Riker asked. "Why didn't he finish you himself?" Lee's eyes darkened. "Because the prophecy says that the last heir of the fallen clan will be reborn through fire, and that she will stand beside a stranger not born of Keflar, who will raise the blade in her name. That's you." Riker's mouth went dry. "I'm not part of your prophecy. I was just trying to stop a killing." The sage stepped closer, voice like thunder. "And yet, here you stand with the sword of her ancestors in the heart of the sacred cavern, bonded by ancient law. You say you don't believe? It doesn't care. Belief is irrelevant. Blood is binding." Suddenly, a bell rang from deep within the mountain. A warning tone. Lee staggered to her feet. "They're coming," she said. "Dreer's men." "How? How did they find us?" Riker asked. "The sword," the sage said softly. "It shines like a beacon now that it's awakened. The clans can feel it. Dreer will not rest until he rips it from your corpse and finishes what he started with Lee." Riker pulled the blade from his back. It pulsed with light, warming his hand. The runes along the edge shimmered like starlight. "Then we fight," he said. "Show me how." Lee looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You don't even know what that blade can do," she said. "It isn't just steel. It remembers. It protects. But it also punishes those who aren't worthy." Riker held it steady. "Let it judge me, then." A loud thud shook the chamber. The old sage turned, eyes wide. "They've breached the first gate," he said. Liy grabbed Riker's wrist. "We have to move, now." As they raced down another dark corridor, pursued by echoes of war drums and heavy boots, Riker felt the blade begin to throb in time with his heartbeat. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was the beginning of something much bigger. And whatever it was, it had chosen him. The tunnels twisted like veins beneath the mountain, narrow, uneven, carved long before any living warrior had drawn breath. Lee moved fast despite her injuries, her footsteps silent, her blade ready. Riker followed, his grip tight on the ancient sword. It pulsed with each heartbeat, the light from its runes guiding them through the pitch-black corridors. Behind them, the enemy advanced. Dreer's soldiers, their boots thudding like distant thunder, their growls echoing through the stone halls. Riker had never heard a sound like that before. It wasn't rage. It was something darker. Hunger. They weren't just coming to kill. They were coming to erase. Liy halted at a fork in the tunnel, her hand brushing an ancient symbol etched into the wall. It glowed briefly, revealing a hidden passage narrow, almost too tight to move through. This way, she whispered. Riker hesitated. Are you sure? If we take the main path, we'll be cornered within minutes. As they slipped inside, the walls seemed to close in. Roots hung from the ceiling, dripping water. The sword scraped lightly against stone with each step. Riker whispered, "What happens if they catch us?" Lee didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, she said, "They won't kill you quickly. Not if you carry the sword. They'll try to sever your bond with it, cut it from your hand, shatter your mind, bend your blood until it obeys. They'll try to turn you into a weapon against me." Riker went still. "They've done it before," she added. "Long ago. With others the sword chose, but it never lasted. The sword knows betrayal." "And what about you?" Riker asked. "If they capture you?" Lee's silence was louder this time. She kept walking. They emerged into a chamber with a high ceiling and broken stone altars. Murals lined the walls, old stories painted in blood and ash. Riker approached one. It showed a human figure surrounded by fire, raising the same sword he now held. Beside him stood a warrior woman with eyes like Lee's, and behind them, cities rose from the ruins. "How old is this?" Riker asked. "Older than Keflar's." "Wars," she replied. "It's been waiting for centuries." "Maybe longer." He turned to face her. "You don't believe in fate. So why follow the prophecy now?" Lee stepped forward, her voice low. "Because the prophecy isn't about fate. It's about choice. When that blade lit up in your hand, the world didn't decide for you. You did. You stepped into a war you didn't understand for someone you didn't know." A loud clang interrupted. A signal bell, deeper in the tunnels. Liy swore under her breath. "They've reached the shrine." She spun, pulling Riker by the arm. They rushed to the other side of the chamber, where a broken stairwell spiraled upward. "What's above?" Riker asked as they climbed. An old observatory, half buried in stone. But from there, we can run or fight. As they ascended, the storm outside returned, louder than before. Wind howled through the cracks in the ancient structure. Lightning lit the sky, casting ghostly shadows on the walls. At the top, the observatory was little more than a crumbling platform. The ceiling had collapsed long ago, and the stars were veiled behind rolling clouds. Liy pointed toward the horizon. "See that ridge?" Riker nodded. "Beyond it is the last stronghold of my people. If we make it there, we have allies. Warriors who still remember the old ways, who still believe. And if we don't, then you die. And so do I. And the clans die with us." Riker stood beside her, staring into the darkness. "I didn't ask for this," he said quietly. "None of us did," Lee replied. "But some of us carry it anyway." Just then, a deafening roar shattered the air. Behind them, a wall of flame exploded through the side of the mountain, lighting up the entire observatory. Soldiers surged through the breach. Creatures in bone-white armor with jagged blades and glowing red eyes. Lee spun, blade drawn. "They've found us." Riker raised the sword. It pulsed again, stronger now, brighter. And something changed. The air thickened. Time seemed to slow. He heard whispers, voices not his own, ancient and distant. One said, "Stand. The blood has chosen." He stepped forward. The first soldier lunged. Riker swung instinctively, steel meeting steel. The clash echoed like thunder. His arm trembled, but he didn't fall. Liy fought beside him, swift and brutal. They moved together like halves of a single thought, her speed, his strength, both guided by the blade. After 3 attackers fell, the rest pulled back, regrouping. Then a voice boomed from the flames. Enough. Dreer stepped through the breach. His armor glistened with blood. His eyes locked onto the sword in Riker's hand. You think the sword makes you strong? Dreer snarled. You don't even know what it costs. Riker didn't answer. This is your last chance, Dreer growled. Drop the blade, leave the girl, and I might let you live. Riker looked at Liy. She didn't speak. She didn't need. 2. He turned back to Dreer and raised the sword. Come take it. Dreer laughed. Then die, fool. He charged, and the mountain trembled again. Light exploded as Dreer's blade met Riker's in midair, the force of the collision shattering what remained of the stone floor beneath them. The impact sent waves of heat rippling through the crumbling observatory, and for a heartbeat, the world held still, then burst into chaos. Riker stumbled back, the ancient sword vibrating violently in his grip. It wasn't just a weapon anymore. It felt alive. It pulsed like a second heart, wild and angry. Each rune along the blade's surface glowing with a warning. Dreer advanced, forearm swinging a pair of curved swords with terrifying speed, his voice rising over the roaring wind. You are nothing, outsider, a fool with a toy. You think that blade makes you chosen? Riker blocked one strike, then another, each blow sending shockwaves up his arms. The third caught him in the shoulder and spun him sideways. He hit the ground hard, skidding toward the edge of the broken platform. Lightning flashed, revealing the drop beneath. Liy moved like wind and fury, intercepting Dreer before he could reach Riker. Her blade met his in a blur of motion, and the sound of steel on steel rang through the storm. She shouted back without looking at Riker. Get up! The sword chose you, now use it. But the blade in Riker's hand felt heavier than ever, not just physically. It was as if it had pulled every burden of Keflar into his bones. He could hear the whispers again, the voices of long-dead warriors. Some angry, some pleading, some silent with grief. He climbed to his feet as Dreer bellowed and knocked Lee backward with a brutal slam of both swords. She hit the far wall with a crack of bone and metal and didn't move. No! Riker shouted, lunging forward. Dreer laughed. You think you matter to her? You're just a tool of the old magic. A mistake. She would have died anyway. Then I'll die with her, Riker said. The blade flared. Light surged from its edge, and the sound that came from it wasn't steel. It was a scream. A memory. A promise. Riker struck, his first swing. Missed, his second parried. But the third, guided not by skill but by something deeper, slammed into Dreer's shoulder. Sparks erupted as ancient magic tore through the warlord's armor. Dreer reeled back, roaring in rage. Then he vanished in smoke. Gone. Not dead. Retreated. A tactical retreat, not a surrender. The other soldiers followed, vanishing like shadows. On water. Riker dropped to his knees beside Lee. Blood trickled from her lip and her breathing was shallow. Lee, he whispered, don't you dare die on me. Her eyelids fluttered. You're not bad with that thing, she murmured, weakly smirking. He laughed through clenched teeth, relief cutting through the haze. You always this hard to kill? Always, she whispered. The old sage emerged from the smoke, cloak billowing. You've done it. You've wounded the warlord of ruin. No one has done that in 100 years. He's not finished, Riker said. No, the sage agreed, kneeling beside Lee. But now he bleeds, and that is the beginning of his end. Lee coughed again, forcing herself to sit up. We need to get to Haven's Spine, she said. There are people there, loyalists, warriors. They can help us. They've been waiting for a sign. A sign? Riker asked. She looked him in the eye. You are the sign. They escaped the ruins before the storm could return. They rode through the night on hollow-boned creatures called sky-striders, the wind tearing at their cloaks, a sword still glowing faintly at Riker's back. As they rode, Lee told him of Haven's Spine, a city carved into the cliffs, unreachable by most, guarded by ancient runes and blood oaths. It was the last true stronghold of the fallen clans, a place where warriors still believed the prophecy would be fulfilled, where leaders still whispered the name of the stranger the sword would choose. Riker listened, trying to understand the weight placed on him. Every time the blade pulsed against his back, he felt more like a conduit than a man. "They'll expect a savior," he said. "Someone who knows their ways, someone who believes." Lee looked at him sideways. "They'll expect a warrior. You've already proven you are one." They rode in silence after that until the spires of Haven's Spine came into view, tall, jagged, lit from within by glowing veins of stone, but something was wrong. As they approached, smoke rose from the lower terraces. The great runes carved into the walls had gone dark. Lee's eyes narrowed. "No, they've already begun." "Begun? What?" Riker asked. "Purging. Dreer's men got here first." They dismounted at a narrow path leading upward. The screams of battle echoed down from the heights. Liy drew her blade again, hand shaking. "If they take Haven's Spine, there's nowhere left." Riker unsheathed the sword. The runes blazed white-hot. "Then we don't let them take it," he said. They ran together into the mouth of the last sanctuary of the old world. Fire rained from above. And the true war began. Fire rained from the broken heavens as Riker and Lee ran into the mouth of Haven's Spine. The wind howled through the hollow cliffs, carrying smoke, ash, and the screams of the dying. Once this city had been the last untouched sanctuary of the old clans, a place of lore, strategy, and sacred training. Now it was war. Stone corridors trembled with the force of explosions from above. Warriors in the deep blue armor of the fallen clans fought desperately on the upper tiers, but they were being overwhelmed. Dreer had moved faster than anyone expected. And worse, he hadn't just sent soldiers. He had sent hollowed, Riker saw. Them first twisted remnants of warriors whose minds had been broken and bodies reforged with black metal and ancient poison. They moved like ghosts, silent, surgical, ruthless. Liy skidded to a halt near the gate stair, grabbing a wounded fighter by the collar. "Where is Commander Valen?" she shouted. The man coughed blood, pointing upward. "Holding the sky sanctum." "Barely. Dreer has the flame corridor. He's trying to destroy the core." Lee cursed under her breath and turned to Riker. "The core is everything," she said. "If it falls, Haven's Spine dies. Its wards, its light, its memory. Everything." Riker didn't hesitate. "Then that's where we go." They took the Firelift's ancient gravity chambers carved into glowing columns of quartz. As they ascended, the full scale of the battle unfolded. Clans fought atop bridges of glass suspended between towers. Archers launched bolts into the storm and beast-mounted. Soldiers clashed midder. At the heart of it all, Riker saw him. Dreer. Standing atop the flame corridor, the sacred bridge leading to the core sanctum, with his four-bladed warstaff and a burning flag of conquest tied to his back. His voice boomed across the canyon. "Do you see now, people of the old blood? Your sanctuaries fall like dust. Your myths mean nothing." Riker tightened his grip on the sword. Its runes pulsed like a heartbeat in his hand. He could feel its anger, its sadness. Liy stared at him, chest heaving. "If we fall here," she said, "the prophecy dies with us." "Then we don't fall," Riker answered. They ran across the sky bridge, lightning splitting the storm above. Hollowed warriors surged toward them, moving like shadows made of muscle and blade. Lee spun into them like a flame-fast, sharp, deliberate. Riker followed, his blade cutting arcs of white fire through the air, but they were outnumbered. As they reached the midspan, a massive figure dropped in front of them, 8 feet tall, plated in black armor, eyes like dying stars. A hollowed high guard. It lunged, striking Lee across the ribs and sending her crashing into the wall. Riker didn't think. He leapt out, the sword howled through the air, the sound of it tearing the storm itself. It struck the high guard's chest, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the armor cracked. Light poured out. The high guard screamed, not in pain, but in release, and crumbled to ash. Riker stood still, chest heaving. The sword glowed brighter than ever. Liy limped to her feet. That shouldn't have been possible, she whispered. What happened? You didn't just kill him. The sword freed him. Before they could speak more, Dreer raised his staff and fire erupted from the sanctum gates. The sky bridge trembled, crumbling from the edges inward. Run! Lee shouted. They barely made it to the other side before the bridge collapsed into the abyss. Inside the sanctum, the air was heavy with heat and memory. Crystals glowed with ancient power, and the heart of Haven, the core flame, floated in midair above a basin of silver stone. Dreer stood before it. He turned slowly. So the pretender lives, he said, and brings his bride to die beside him. Lee stepped forward, bleeding but unshaken. You desecrate sacred ground, Dreer. Your ancestors would spit on you. Dreer sneered. My ancestors were weak. They built temples when they should have. Built armies, and now their ruins burn behind me. Riker moved between him and the flame. This ends now, he said. Dreer laughed. Then let it end. He struck first, his war staff spinning in blinding arcs. Riker blocked, deflected, ducked. Every blow felt like thunder, but Riker had changed. Wasn't the man who stumbled into an arena. He was a warrior now. The blade sang as it moved, not with rage, but with purpose. It moved like it had found its home again. And for the first time, Dreer faltered. Liy joined the fight, her blade catching Dreer's side. He roared and spun, nearly catching her throat, but Riker drove him back with a two-handed strike that shattered part of his armor. The battle burned on clashing steel, blood and lightning. Then Riker saw it. The weak point. He spun, the blade rising in a clean arc, and struck. The sword slid through Dreer's chest. His war staff clattered to the floor. Dreer gasped, blood in his mouth. You were never supposed to exist. Riker leaned in. Then maybe your world wasn't supposed to survive. Dreer collapsed. The flame core pulsed once. Then a wave of golden light swept through the sanctum. Outside, the storm broke. Lee dropped to her knees, staring at the glow. You did it, she said, voice barely above a whisper. You ended him. Riker looked down at his hands. The sword was silent now, peaceful. And for the first time since he touched it, he felt free. But Lee wasn't smiling. What's wrong? He asked. This isn't over, she said. Keflar felt that death, and now the others will come. Riker stared into the sky, where the clouds parted, revealing distant, unfamiliar shapes moving in the dark. Ships. Armada. And the war had only just begun. The sky above Haven's spine had not cleared, it had only shifted. The storm was gone, but in its place, the air grew tight and still, like a world holding its breath. In the distance, high above the cliffs and broken towers, massive shapes drifted in from the void. Black armored ships with crimson underlights pierced through the cloud ceiling. Silent as death, moving in formation. Riker stood beside Lee at the edge of the sanctum platform. Behind them, the remnants of her clan, bloody, exhausted, but still breathing, gathered in silence. Dreer's corpse lay sprawled at the base of the flame core, his war staff shattered, his blood soaking into the sacred stone. And yet, victory felt hollow. Lee's eyes were locked on the sky. Her voice came as a whisper. The convocation has awakened. Riker turned to her, uncertain. What is the convocation? She looked at him, and for the first time since they met, he saw real fear in her face. They are the true power behind the warlords. Ancient houses that never dirtied their hands but pulled every string. While we fought each other, they grew stronger, deeper, colder. Riker narrowed his gaze at the floating ships. So Dreer was just a pawn. No, she replied bitterly. He was their sword. And now that he's broken, they've come to take the blade back. To take you. The ancient sword on Riker's back began to vibrate again, not in anger this time, but in warning. Li touched his arm. They will not ask for surrender. They will not negotiate. To them, you are not a person. You are a breach in prophecy. A threat to the cycle they control. Then we fight. Lee shook her head. Not like this. Not here. Haven's spine is broken. Our people are wounded. We cannot stand against an armada. Behind them, the old sage approached, his robe scorched, his eyes still bright with strange fire. The sword has chosen. But prophecy is not a single thread, it is a weave. And the weavers are not done. What do we do? Riker asked. The sage handed him an orb of obsidian glass. Within it swirled flickers of fire and stars. There is a place, the sage said. Older than Keflar, a fortress built before the clans ever rose. Buried deep beneath the roots of this world. It is where the sword was first forged. And only there will it reveal its full purpose. Lee nodded. I've heard whispers of this place. A myth. A place where the sword's memory lives. Riker took the orb and felt it pull himself far below. Can we reach it before they land? The sage's voice lowered. If you ride the bloodlines through the forgotten tunnels. Lee's eyes widened. You're talking about the marrow roads? They're real, the sage said, and they're waking. Within the hour, Riker, Lee, and a small group of surviving warriors descended into the underbelly of Keflar, a place untouched for thousands of years. The marrow roads were not roads at all, but tunnels carved by something ancient, something living. The walls were made of blackened stone, streaked with veins that pulsed dimly with red light. At times, the tunnels seemed to breathe. And the deeper they went, the more the sword glowed, almost as if it remembered. Riker walked at the front, each footstep echoing down corridors that felt like ribs. He tried not to think about how the air smelled earth, ash, old blood. Lee stayed close to him. In the silence between their steps, she finally spoke. My father told me the marrow roads were forbidden. He said the clans who entered them vanished. Not because they were lost, but because they were seen. Riker glanced at her. Seen by what? Before she could answer, the tunnel widened into a cathedral-like chamber. A towering construct stood at its center, a monolith covered in runes, its core pulsing with the same light as the sword. Riker stepped forward. The moment his hand touched the stone, the chamber came alive. Walls shifted. Ancient doors cracked. Open. Symbols blazed to life all around them, and a voice filled the room, not a voice they heard, but one they felt. You are the bridge. The sword is the key. She is the oath. And the enemy is already here. Lee turned. What does that mean? From the tunnels behind them, the ground shook. Riker unsheathed the sword. The blade was no longer just metal. It shimmered like liquid. Light. It felt lighter, faster, deadlier. Soldiers burst through the tunnel behind them, armored in obsidian, their faces hidden behind smooth masks. These were not Dreer's brutes. They moved in silence. In perfect synchronY. Convocation elite. Riker moved forward without hesitation. The sword met them in silence, cutting the first attacker in half before he hit the floor. Another lunged. Riker twisted, dropped, sliced. Each motion felt guided by memory older than him. Liy fought beside him again. But this time, it was different. They weren't just defending. They were awakening something. As the last attacker fell, the monolith cracked open. A staircase spiraled downward into impossible blackness. The voice returned. You must descend. The truth lies buried in the roots of the First War. Riker turned to Lee. What truth? She stared down the staircase. Why the sword really chose you. They stepped into the dark. Behind them, the monolith sealed shut. Above them, the skies of Keflar burned. And ahead beneath the world's crust lay the secret that had rewritten fate itself. The stairwell spiraled endlessly downward, carved not from stone but from bone, old, massive, fossilized. It twisted beneath the surface of Keflar like the spine of some forgotten titan. Every step Riker and Lee took echoed into a silence, so deep it made the world above feel like a dream. Here, the sword didn't glow. It burned. Its runes pulsed with golden fire, casting shadows that moved even when they stood still. And as they descended deeper, Riker began to hear voices, not whispers this time, but full-throated words spoken in a language he didn't know yet somehow understood. You are the last breath of the First War, and the first word of the final. One, Lee felt it too. Her shoulders stiffened. Her breathing shallowed. And yet, she didn't stop. After what felt like hours, the staircase opened into a colossal chamber. It was impossibly wide and impossibly old, lit by veins of light embedded into the walls. In the center stood a massive black obelisk shaped like the blade Riker carried, only larger than any tower he had ever seen. A mirror image of the sword, but ancient, untouched. Beneath it sat a single stone altar. A circle of old armor surrounded. It fused with the floor like a battlefield frozen in time. Figures knelt there, petrified by something unknown, each with swords buried in the ground before them, all facing the center. Liy stepped forward. This is the root, the origin of everything. Riker stared at the altar. And the truth? Lay nodded. It lies here in blood. As Riker approached, the sword vibrated more violently than ever before, until the pressure in the chamber dropped like the air had been pulled from it. A single flame lit atop the altar. A voice, deep and resonant, filled the chamber. But it didn't come from around them. It came from within Riker. Do you wish to know why you were chosen? Riker felt his chest tighten. Yes, then bleed. Lee turned sharply, but Riker had already stepped forward. Without hesitation, he raised the blade and sliced his palm, letting blood drip onto the altar stone. Everything went white. A vision seized him. He saw planets burning, armies clashing beneath black suns, and in every battle, his sword passed from hand to hand, never resting, never choosing, always searching, until it came to a war it could not stop. A war not of clans, but of gods. They had created the sword as a failsafe, forged not to kill, but to reform. A blade that would choose only once a wielder whose heart had no thirst for power, only the instinct to protect. The sword had waited eons, bypassed kings, passed over conquerors. It had even rejected the greatest warriors of Keflar's past, until Riker, a man who had no name on this planet, no ambition, no agenda. Only a moment of choice in an arena where he stepped forward not for glory, but for a stranger, and that was why he had been chosen. The sword had not picked a savior. Had picked a witness, a bridge, a human heart capable of standing in fire without becoming fire. When the vision ended, Riker staggered backward. His hand was healed. The blood was gone. But the sword, it had changed. The hilt had grown dark. The blade, now pure white. No runes, no glow. It was quiet. Liy caught him as he fell to one knee. What did you see? He looked at her. The truth. It was never about me being strong. It was about not wanting to be. Lee's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. Then you really are the last hope. Behind them, the chamber trembled. Riker rose. The monolith in the center began to crack, light pouring from within. A voice boomed from above. Not from the sword. Not from the chamber, but from Keflar itself. The false order ends now. A beam of light shot into the sky through the roots of the world, blasting through every layer of stone and ash. Up past the cliffs of Haven's Spine. Into the very clouds where the Convocation fleet had begun to descend. The ships faltered. The runes of Keflar, long dormant, flared to life across the planet's surface. Entire mountain ranges ignited with light, forming ancient patterns only visible from the sky. Liy stared in awe. You awakened the planet, she whispered. You didn't just fulfill the prophecy, you unlocked it. Riker turned back. To the altar. The sword now floated above it. He stepped away. I don't need to carry it anymore, he said. Liy looked at him, confused. But, it's not about the weapon. It's about what the world becomes without needing it. The chamber shook harder now, but not with violence. With power. Above, on the surface, the Convocation ships began to fall. Not from damage, but from abandonment. Crews fled. Systems failed. Lights died. Keflar had reclaimed itself, and the people, once divided into shattered clans, began to emerge from the ashes. Warriors who had fought on both sides knelt in the Faidzin Patam. Light pouring from the cracked sky. Not in surrender. In understanding. Liy stood beside Riker as the light engulfed them. What happens now? She asked. He looked to the horizon. We build together. She smiled for the first time without pain. You're still my husband, you know, Riker chuckled. We'll figure that out too. They stepped into the light, and somewhere, far beneath the roots of the world, the sword waited once more, not for war, but for peace.